2nd. And we are back here on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT and sharing that here as well on Facebook.com/WakeUpCall DT. So proud to be here with you, proud to be hanging out inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. You know, every Wednesday we have the Fantasy Football Power Hour, not one of, not a, but the Fantasy Football Power Hour, and that's with Mr. Mike Sofka, and that coming to you every single Wednesday in hour number 2 is always given its own video because we have so much to offer with fantasy football, and fantasy football has blossomed on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora over the years, as I've been a commissioner of our Wake Up Call fantasy football leagues for 11 years down in Florida, 10 years up here in central and upstate New York. So definitely appreciate you being here as we get ready to bring Mr. Sofka on the show to have another fantastic conversation with my co-host of all things fantasy football. So get ready to have Mike here, and excited to have Mike here on the show once again. And here he comes. There he is. So Mr. Sofka, how you doing today? How's life?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, Dan?
Man, I'm doing okay. Came down with not feeling that great. So the larynx is definitely, I mean, I get to learn a lot about my larynx, I'll tell you that much. But I'm doing good, staying hydrated, and just trying to get better. So how are you?
Yeah, everything's good. Just trying to keep chugging along here. I had the opportunity to go hang out with some really cool people over at the Ukrainian Festival here in Orlando this past weekend. That was a lot of fun. So just, trying to do me.
Bring me into that. So there's a Ukrainian festival in Orlando?
Yeah, it just so happened that it was scheduled for this time. This was the inaugural Ukrainian festival, and I found out about it by accident, and I ended up meeting some really nice people, and kind of got embedded with what they got going on over there. And it was because that's where a lot of my ancestry is. And but what turned out that was initially going to be a celebration ended up being in some sorts of rally because of what's going on with the situation with Russia invading the Ukraine. So it's it's a kind of sad situation, but there was some entertainment. But the entertainment, of course, went and changed their performance set lists and things like that because you're not going to sing happy-go-lucky songs and celebration songs. So that it was more patriotic, more more uplifting for people in a tough time.
And you said that a lot of your descent is from you have a Ukrainian background?
Correct.
So for you, I know obviously we talk fantasy football, but the tagline of Wake Up Call is where sports meets life, and there's more important things going on. Do you have family in Ukraine right now? And then secondly, how have you kind of taken this all in? Because I'm sure it hits home for you.
Well, it does, simply because of this is more remembrance of my grandparents and so forth. Unfortunately, through time, we end up somewhat getting away from traditional or ancestral values sometimes, and we end up, missing out on the language, missing out on some of the culture. In my family, while we miss out on a lot of the language, we do keep a lot of the culture. Our Christian beliefs are embedded in the Orthodox Church, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and we run off a different calendar as far as holidays. So there's Orthodox Christmas and Easter and so forth. So we still have those celebrations. We have traditional foods at those celebrations and so forth. So we try to keep focus on where we're from. You can't forget where you're from because you won't know where you're going. Yeah. And the thing that really hits home for me is I am so separated from my ancestry. It's a little further back on the family tree than I have totally investigated right now. So this is a sign to myself that maybe I should dig in a little more and see what I can find out while I can find it out.
Yeah, and I think my buddy John and his wife, I mean, obviously they're connected directly back because of her. And if they hadn't met each other, she would be in Ukraine, arguably right now, as all this is going on. So it's very, very sad and disheartening to see anything like this. I think it calls attention to us that some of us, like you said, if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. I think the world needs to understand that this is very Hitler-esque. This is very like, hey, I'm going to take a little piece and leave me alone, and I'm going to take another piece, but don't worry, everything's fine. It's not a big deal. Just let me do me. And so, I think as we talk about fantasy football and as we talk about, Major League Baseball and all these things that are going on, I find it's not an if, or it's not should I, it's there's to me, when you have a microphone and this is what you do for a living, you have a right and you have an obligation to the world to say, hey, this is not okay. This is wrong, and it's 2022, and this is how we treat people still. We just go in and take things when we want things. You just go into someone's sandbox and steal. And, the thing that's really hard for me is that on a big scale, we're seeing Ukraine right now, right, with Russia invading. And then on a small scale, but that hit home for me, is Jim Boeheim's been the coach of Syracuse for 46 years. His wife just got robbed at the mall that's like 10 minutes down the road from my dad and my mom. So she just got robbed yesterday. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, and it was by a juvenile, and I'm looking at this going, okay, so in the parking lot of that mall, there was this one parking lot area where kids were just slashing tires for fun. You come outside, maybe it's you today, maybe it's not. And then you get robbed here, and somebody gets shot a couple of weeks ago. I don't understand on the small or the large scale why people, and we just went through a pandemic together. We just got locked up together. We just got forced to be away from everybody. This disease is real. It has killed hundreds of thousands of people. And a lot of these people that died, families couldn't even see them because they were in nursing homes and whatnot. And what did we learn from all of this death and all of these horrible things going on? That we should still steal from each other, kill each other, yell at each other. I would think that over the last 2 years, people would start to maybe in their brain materialize that maybe it's not good for me to shoot people or to steal, or maybe I shouldn't be mean to my neighbor, because 2 years should have brought us together. Why are we coming out of a pandemic being just as nasty, if not nastier? I don't think God gave it to us. I think God is opportunistic. And I think in being opportunistic, he was like, hey, pause button, everybody learned something. Some of us did. And some other people came out of this going, no, I'm still going to shoot people. I'm still going to steal. Like, I don't understand what compels a human being through tragedy to still be an idiot. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, God's opportunistic at times, and for me it was meeting these people from the Ukrainian festival. I got to meet I just did an interview, as a matter of fact, last night. I just have to, soften up the edges on it. It's going to be, I'm going to release it tonight at 8 o'clock on the What's Hot in Florida YouTube page. I also have a website under the same name where you'll find on both the YouTube page and the website, you'll find close to 40 videos that I did from this event over the weekend. A lot of it's the cultural entertainment, but at the same time, there's some people speaking some powerful messages. And I even put a composite video together, which I put up in the late hours of early this morning here, and it's already taken off like a rocket. So I was crying the whole time I was editing the video. It was very impactful, and I've had people telling me the same thing. I didn't mean to go over the top with it, and I certainly don't think I did, but at the same time, it's something to see. There was a young lady there performing, I think the artist's name is Andra Day, Rise Up, and was one of the few songs they had performed that day in English, and it was very, it was, you could see the tears, and it was very moving. Her performance was extremely moving, so you can catch that on the, and forgive me for the shameless plug, but, catch that on the What's Hot in Florida YouTube page.
Yeah, and I think You know, I think that's, I mean, what people, we need to see that, right? You know, we should be moved to be emotional. You know, this should bother people. You know, it should. I mean,
Well,
go ahead.
sorry. Well, my guest last night, I'll give you a little spoiler here, and again, I'm going to release that interview tonight at 8 o'clock. He he's from the Ukraine. He lives
Yeah.
here in the state. His wife is from Russia. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic. We had an interesting conversation, and the perils and the passion and the tears that this guy shed last night during the interview, it was real. It's as real as I can get. It's as close as I can get to the story, and and it really impacted me because not only as a person with Ukrainian ancestry, but as a U.S. citizen, he pointed out to me, he says, we're on the front line of democracy. That's what Ukraine is fighting for right now. He says, and I'll tell you something, Putin wants to put everything back like it used to be. Well, Alaska used to be part of Russia. Maybe he comes through Alaska next. There's a lot of minerals, there's a lot of oil and stuff like that in Alaska. Maybe he comes and takes that next. You don't know who's next, and you don't know who you don't know. The guy down the
Yeah.
street from you, I didn't know these people before the festival. This guy drove from Jacksonville to come to Central Florida for the festival. So we just ran into each other, and here we are able to tell a story. So it's only 30 minutes, but it is very dramatic. So again, look for that tonight on the What's Hot in Florida YouTube channel.
Yeah, you know, and I appreciate the fact that you did that because, I mean, it does. I mean,
I had to. I felt obligated. It was there. The story was there.
well, and that's the thing is, and how did you, when you're at the festival, how did you go about this? Did you kind of just walk up to different families and say, hey, you know, I'm Mike Sofka, I have the show. I mean, how did you interact? How did you find that family?
Well, I stumbled across the festival. I didn't know about it until like a week before, and I didn't reach out to anybody. I just, was like, oh, I'm going to show up. I like going to festivals. I most recently went to the Scottish Highland Festival. I like taking in the culture, the people who dress up, and the food, the music. I like taking all that stuff in. I feel it's the closest thing I have to going to that country. It's not going to Epcot. It's going to that festival. So I having the ancestry here, I decided, yes, this is something I have to do. So I went, and they had a couple of the performance acts cancel on them, and some people didn't come from great distances because of the situation in the last week with Ukraine. So, and then the acts that did come had to change everything up a little bit. I could tell the promoters did a great job trying to get this thing together off the ground for the first year, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I could see the struggle in their eyes with what was really going on in the Ukraine. That's what it was really about. They decided to keep the festival open. They didn't want it to turn into a political rally, but at the same time, they wanted it to be some sort of a rallying of people with Ukrainian descent, some sort of rally of people together.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't know a lot of these people, and I met them. So at the event, while I'm videotaping a performance or an act or something, I'm interacting with people as people are moving around and talking and walking, and people are there with their protest type signs. A lot of people with Ukrainian flags and so forth. So you can see a lot of that stuff over on the YouTube channel. But I would just, I handed out the What's Hot in Florida cards so people know where they could see the video of some of the performances, because a lot of times at things like this, people don't realize that there's performances you may want to document, and usually it's a live performance. There's usually no problem with doing that, but more so, I like to wrap things up in the culture, in the cultural blanket of the event, if you would. So I'll take some video, and then I'll mix in some shots of people that are, and this is just what I do for fun. It's almost like a hobby. You would think I wouldn't have time with fantasy football, but this is kind of what I like to do. So I'll throw in some shots of some of the culture and some of the people in traditional dress and so forth. So it's just something I really enjoy doing, and I was happy to do it. Like I said, I almost felt obligated to share these things and to do these things and uncover this story.
Yeah, and I think that there is an obligation, right? There's an obligation to talk about it. There's an obligation
to address it. You know, I had the opportunity to put a Ukrainian flag on my social media and make a statement. And I thought my buddy had put it up, and I liked the flag itself and the picture that he had. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to use this picture. And then I put up what I wanted to put up. And, you know, and very simply, you know, if one of us is attacked, we all are. And, you know, like you said, when, you know, Putin makes a statement of, oh, I want things to go back to the old way. Okay, well, if you give a ruthless dictator something, they're going to keep taking. I tell people all the time, it could be a ruthless dictator, it could be a baby, because that's what they are essentially. And they put their hand in a cookie jar, right? And then when you go, okay, you can't have a cookie, and then all of a sudden you go, okay, you can have one. So then you have two. Then all of a sudden they start eating in the cookie jar. Then there's no cookies. Now they're holding you hostage, going like, "Ma, I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs till you go buy me more cookies, and I get to eat more cookies." And I think, you know, that reality is, you know, maybe if we psychoanalyze Putin, was he loved as a baby? I don't know. But like, it's the reality of the cookie jar effect. When you let someone take and take and take and take, their mentality is that they're owed something and they're going to keep taking. And whenever the world has sat idly by and said, it'll get better, you know, this horrible situation, this guerrilla warfare will go away, this mass murdering, this chemical warfare, this, you know, invading, it'll all stop. No, it doesn't. It doesn't stop. And people watch until it hits their doorstep. But what people need to understand is when you're in America and it happens in Ukraine and you go, well, thank God I don't live there. Well, didn't Americans do that with the pandemic? Oh, thank God it's in China. I don't live in China. Then it came over here and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Then it got to over 500,000 people. And now we're sitting here going, oh, okay, maybe it's important now. Like, unfortunately, people have that doorstep approach. Unless it hits my doorstep, I don't care. But you need to care because there's a trickle down effect of what that means for you. And to me, it hits home immediately because one of my closest friends, like I said, his wife has a connection back there. So, you know, to me, it's 1 degree of separation. And, you know, it's not just, oh, it's over there. And I think, you know, so like you said, you know, to tell these stories, for me to talk about it, there's an obligation for us to discuss what's happening in the world because, yeah, fantasy football is fun and we love talking about it and it's great. But there are people dying because they decided to build a life in a country that they thought was sovereign. And like you said about what that guy said in your interview, Ukraine is not fighting for Ukraine only. Ukraine is fighting at the doorstep of democracy. You know, where's democracy in this country right now? I don't know. Help me look for it. But if it's affected in Ukraine, it's being affected here in America. We're seeing what it's done. We're seeing what socialism did to Venezuela. It killed the country. It crippled the entire nation. So, you know, it's not rocket science to know that there are things that work and there are things that don't. And there are people that quiet the people and there are people that give people the opportunity to speak. It's not rocket science for us to understand that everyone deserves basic. God gave us our rights. Human beings took them away. That's what people need to get. God gave you the right to speak, to practice your religion, to go after your dreams, to wear what you want to wear, be who you want to be. God gave, love who you want to love. God gave you that right. Human beings took it away. So when somebody takes something from your brother or your sister, are you willing to speak up? Or are you going to shut your mouth because it's not you? Because eventually what I've learned about society is that the people that have the cannons, that whether it's figurative or literal, they fire them cannons, fire, 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 and you're standing behind the cannon going, thank God it's not me. And all of a sudden that cannon whips around and fires right at your face. Everybody I know that's been disrespectful to people, everybody I know that's been nasty, eventually they do it to me. Eventually, as I watch them attack other people, they eventually attack me 100% of the time. So I think the reality of it all is for you to think that it's not going to be you. It will be you eventually, unless you put a stop to it. And this is the age-old question. When you walk through it, when you walk by an alley and you see somebody in the alley getting beat up, do you go and help that person or do you pretend like you didn't see it?
Crazy. It's crazy that we even have to ask that question. I mean, first of all, nobody should be getting beat up in an alley, number one. But number two, yeah, how can you look at yourself as a human being if you let something like that happen? I would spring so quickly into action, I wouldn't even have time to think about it. I would immediately react. It's like a instantaneous thing, because how can you do it? It's like, I'll give you an instance. There was a situation where I was helping somebody push a car off a road, and another guy stopped to help push the car off the road, and it was in the evening time, and I turned around, and there was a car coming, and I could tell this car was not going to stop.
Yeah.
So I dove and I threw this guy off the road with me. We landed on the road, and sure enough, that car plowed into that car. So that's a sad story. I don't want to get any more into the whole situation, but I didn't think about it. I didn't have time to think. I reacted, and some people say, "Oh, that's not good." Well, it worked out for us that day, you know. So yeah, you can't stand around and let something like that happen. Even if you're not that quick in reaction and you got to stop and think about it or whatever, you got to do something. You're a human being. Do something. Pick up your phone, scream and yell, pick up a rock and throw it. Do something to assist or just do the right thing. Otherwise, how can you lay your head down on your pillow at night? How can you sleep if you know that you could have helped someone and you didn't?
Well, and that's the thing is, you know, you go home and say, okay, I'm safe and sound, but a person with a heart, which we all have, or else we'd be dead, a person with a heart would sit there and go, yeah, but did that person make it home today? And God, again, I think, you know, he's a lesson teacher. And when you let somebody, you know, when you just look the other way, you don't look down the alley and you, oh yeah, that person's getting beat up, I'm not going to look, and you walk away, eventually something happens. And it may not be exactly that, but something happens where you're thinking, is there anybody here to help me? Maybe your car breaks down and you got your hand up on the side of the road and 75 cars just drive by you and nobody stops. And that should hit you and be like, oh, okay, this is God telling me, hey, remember when you didn't look? Remember when you didn't care? Well, here it is. And I believe that that lesson gets taught. And that's not me wishing bad on anybody. That's reality. I believe that when you don't learn a lesson, the lesson gets taught to you and you get to learn it over and over again until you actually learn it, until you actually take what you're supposed to take from it. And, you know, I mean, I applaud what you did. I remember being in a big city and there was someone that I was with at the time, and she went to walk and there was a ton of people and there was this Jeep that was just flying through and it was by Times Square. And I'm looking at this Jeep and I'm going, this Jeep is not going to stop. So she goes to step off the curb and I grabbed her. I grabbed whatever I could. I ended up grabbing her jacket and I pulled her back like as hard as I could so that the Jeep would miss her. And I remember her looking at me being like, you know, why did you do that? Like, why did you grab me? And I was like, you didn't see. And in my situation, she was mad that like I pulled on her jacket and I was like, well, what, you know, I didn't know what to do. All I could think about was you're going to get hit by a car. And in my mind, it was car, you, jacket, grab it, pull it. And I mean, but I would do that for anybody. If I saw an old lady, then I would, you know, I'd do that, like run and jump, and you hope you don't hurt her. You hope nothing happens, but it's like, I'm going to cover her body with my body and hope to God that she stays safe. You know, I don't know how to be any other way than to care, because in my mind, if I don't help that woman, then in my head, I'm thinking, what if it was my mom? You know, or I'm thinking like my dad injured his arm, or my dad just had surgery. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, so like, what if it was my dad? And what if my dad was walking and a car almost hit him? You know, would I want somebody to save my dad? You know, would I want to hear that my dad got hit by a car while everybody watched? Or would I want to hear that, you know, my dad's safe today and he's got a couple scrapes because some good Samaritan came along and jumped? right in front of the car and got him to stop or got my dad out of the way. You know, it doesn't take much to care for people. And I never forgot that somebody told me this. It takes more muscles in your body to frown than it does to smile. So it actually is more of an effort for you to be miserable and negative than it is for you to be positive. It actually takes less strain on your body to be positive. So, you know, I just think that that should tell you everything that you need to know. And in, you know, in today's world, I expect more from people, not to have the head coach of any, whether they knew it was as her or not, but to find out Julie Boeheim was robbed at gunpoint at the mall that we so greatly needed in Syracuse to be one of the top 3 biggest malls in America. And, you know, people don't feel safe going there at 2:00 in the afternoon. Like, what is the point? What is the point of this? What are you gaining by doing this to anybody, whether you knew it was her or not? You know, my grandmother went to that mall. My mom goes to that mall to buy Christmas gifts. Like, it could have been anybody. I was just there last week. And in my head, before I went there, I went, do I feel safe enough to go by myself? And I'm like, why am I even asking myself this question? I've been going to this mall my whole life. Why do I have to ask myself at 36 years old, do I feel safe? I used to go there when I was 5. But, you know, they used to tell you there was a certain bathroom in the mall that you can't send your kids to by themselves because they might get abducted. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is Syracuse, New York. This is my hometown. Like, I'm at Burger King with my mom and I can't go pee because somebody might take me and go out the back tunnel way or something like that. I mean, it's just, it's horrifying to me that people can't go buy groceries, go to the mall, like normal stuff. It doesn't make sense. I mean, remember schools and, you know, remember schools here, Columbine happened, right? And it was to us, what, like 1 in a billion that it would happen in America. And now it's happened numerous times. At one point, it was happening like every other week. We thought we could go to the movie theater, and then some idiot dresses up in a mask, goes to a theater in Aurora, Colorado, and decides, hey, I'm going to do this today because something in my head told me to. Like, I shouldn't go to a movie and be looking around. Like, that shouldn't be me. I shouldn't go to a church and be wondering, am I safe here? You know, when you go out and we just for 2 years were like told to stay out of public or to distance ourselves from each other. And now when we go back out in public to go to church or the mall or the grocery store or the movie theater, we have to worry about our safety. Like, I remember we had a free night for Syracuse. It was it was orange. It's when the basketball teams have their like little orange fan fest, whatever. And somebody was stabbed at the event, this free event, just like these 2 young people. One of them decided to stab the other one. And it's like, bro, it's a free event for the community to watch a bunch of basketball. Like, that's all it is. Like, what were you fighting about? So, you know, and then after that, we got metal detectors in the dome. And now everybody that comes through, and people complain and moan about it. But you know what? A decade ago, there was a trust system in Syracuse. It couldn't happen to us in Syracuse. Now you got to go through a metal detector. Why? Because you're a jerk. And at the mall, I wouldn't be surprised if they start putting metal detectors at every entrance so that you can't bring weapons into the mall anymore. So there isn't more, you know, isn't any more violence with weapons and whatnot. I mean, Mike, you and I both know a world where when your wife was going on a flight, you could walk through security and sit there with her until she got on the plane. Now we can't do that. You know, we know a world before metal detectors. We know a world before TSA. We know a world before, you know, we had to walk into a movie theater and look at the guy that's standing up in the corner and wonder if he's going to sit down. We lived in a world before that. I used to think this was Jerusalem. I used to think only the Middle East had these issues. And now, you know, it's happened in America. So again, if you have the mentality of, well, it's over there, it's not over here. Well, guess what? It was over there. Now it's over here. So what are you going to do about it? And we have an obligation to help each other. And it's not to belabor the point. It's reality. Like, sometimes you need to bang it into people's foreheads that you can't sit idly by and watch your neighbor get robbed, because eventually After that person's robbed every house on the block, guess whose house they're coming to? We need to do better, Mike. And I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted waking up this morning about everything with Russia. And I'm disgusted waking up in Syracuse, New York, with people telling me they don't feel safe going to the mall that I grew up in.
It's the world we live in. It's a double-edged sword. We want our freedoms, but we have to give up some of those freedoms sometime for our own safety. So, there's an old, I think I'm probably going to butcher it, but there's one of the guys who signed the Declaration of Independence had a quote saying, if you give up your liberty, giving up your freedom for whatever, you know what? I'm going to look it up and get back to you. I think it's something about a man who gives up his freedoms for security has neither, or something to that effect. So
yeah, it's
just.
I'm trying to see it right now. Mike is frozen here for a second. Can you hear me, Mike?
I have you. All right, I'm still here.
Right,
You
Mike,
still here?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
still,
I went
you're
away
here.
for a second, I guess.
Yeah. So it's I was looking at this right now and I was trying to find, I was thinking give me liberty or give me death or give me freedom or give me I remember that quote. But yeah, I mean there has to be some compromise, and I don't know. I mean, I believe in good people. I'm surrounded by them, and I want that to spread like wildfire. I put up a quote yesterday. It's on my story on Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. I write, whenever I write a quote and it's mine, I sign it. And I said, imagine if positivity spread as fast as negativity did, just what the world would look like.
I did a quick Google box on that saying here, and it's Benjamin Franklin. Ben Franklin once said, quote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." So I get it. I mean, but then again, it's a situation like you said. You're going to a basketball game. You're going to an open thing for the public. It's free. It's supposed to help people out. It's supposed to be an exciting event. It's supposed to be a great time. And then the one guy causes everybody to have to go through the scanner now. I get both sides of it. It's just a shame that that's the world we live in. Hopefully, there's enough people out there who will continue to do the right thing and continue to make a difference and do whatever they can do. I can't pick up a gun and go over to Russia right now or Ukraine and fight in a war. I can't do that. It's not going to happen. But what can I do? I can talk to people. I can talk to people about the situation. I can talk to people in the situation. I can help expose what I think is a wrong in the world, what I think is literally good versus evil. I mean, that's what it comes down to right here. It's good versus evil. So, yeah. Which side are you on? That's what you got to ask yourself.
Well, and I think that's the thing is most of the world today lives in a gray area instead of realizing some things are black and white. Murder is wrong. Rape is wrong. Stealing is wrong. Incest is wrong. Taking advantage of somebody is wrong. Lying is wrong. Well, I think if I lied, then it's no. I remember I got cheated on by my ex-wife. You know what she said to me? I said, "You cheated." She goes, "Define your definition of cheating." I went, "That's only what a cheater would say."
That's the problem right there. You just told me what the problem was. Wow.
Yeah. Define your definition of what is your definition. Now, I killed the but what's the definition of, like, how does a criminal sit there and go, yeah, somebody died, but like, let's discuss what the definition of murder is.
That's like Bill Clinton not having sexual relations with that woman. Stop. Really?
Tell the truth. I remember asking my parents, my mom still remembers that day, when I said, "Mom, didn't this guy say 2 weeks ago he didn't? And now he said he did." So I said, "Which is it?" And my mom and my dad were sitting there like they were trying to figure it out, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. But I mean,
Wow, that's pretty good.
Thank you. Even when I don't feel good.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, today's show has been so much bigger than fantasy football, but we are here for the task at hand. So, before we wrap up for the day inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub. And Danny Thome, the owner of the Wildcat, I know would appreciate our entire conversation because he's about being a patriot. He's about doing the right thing. And he took all of his Russian vodka and poured it out in the back of the Wildcat Sports Pub and dumped it in the garbage and said no more. So he's been very clear about how he feels and how he's going to run his business. He doesn't care if he loses money on it because if it comes from Russia, he's not selling it. So, we have definitely talked about the big picture, and rightly so. And I want to jump into the fantasy side of it before we jump out of here, Mike. Just, what your take is. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can be working on within these weeks to come. We can give, some rankers. We can reflect on this past season, and, we can learn from where we have been so that we know where we're going, essentially, going off of what we said in our theme of today. So, what would you like to do in the coming weeks of fantasy football that you feel would be great for our watchers and our listeners?
Well, I think, first of all, it's like I always say, it's pay attention. You do a little bit each day. So, we're fortunate. There's going to be some sort of combine this year. There is going to be some sort of gathering, whether those things are boycotted or not, that's yet to be seen. But, the players are going to be there. So paying attention to that, paying attention to 40 times. I have sorry, I'm just drawing a blank there. It's the adjusted explosive index.
Yeah.
It's a way that I can evaluate wide receivers based on their performance at the combine. And it's not my metric, but I sort of adopted it and carried it on. And what's happened to me is I've discovered that it's very, very accurate. It's within reason. The top guys, whoever passes a certain point, 106 on the chart, that guy is essentially a stud, and it may not be the guy you always think it is. A couple years ago, it was Chase Claypool, and everybody said, "Who is this?" You tell me who that is. That's a guy who's had a pretty good career so far. So then we get into free agents. I mean, we can look at guys like, where's James Conner going? Where's Christian Kirk going? Jadeveon Clowney, Hassan Reddick, Allen Robinson's back in the mix again. So there's defensive players, offensive players, linemen who can impact your fantasy team. Well, why am I worried if Alex Kappa, the offensive guard, why am I worried if he goes to Cincinnati or not? Well, maybe that's going to shore up that sieve of an offensive line in Cincinnati that allowed them to get sacked continuously game after game. So there's a lot to look at, and hopefully we'll be able to break that down in small bits and pieces to help make it make sense. And, I'm excited. I've already started rankings. I got pre-draft rankings that I'm looking at. I got pre-draft rankings that I'm looking at for free agents. I'm looking at dynasty rankings. This is a big time of year to get your dynasty game on. So, I'm sure we're going to have something to talk about every week. No worry about that.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about it. And, you look at the fact that Tom Brady retiring, and then at, I think, 27 years old, one of his linemen decided to retire. So if he was to come back, how would they protect him with that loss, mentioning something like that. So, there's a lot to get into. There's a lot of ways to break this down and what we have going on. So Mike and I will have a schedule of things for you, and we're very excited about that. A lot of great stuff coming up in the Fantasy Football Power Hour. Not one of, not a, but the. It bonds reality and fantasy together every week from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time, year-round, because fantasy never sleeps for us. And so, brought to you by the Wildcat Sports Pub, this is the Fantasy Football Power Hour. The Wildcat is for you on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Open 7 days a week for indoor dining. And when the weather's nice, outdoor dining and a volleyball court for you to enjoy as well. And takeout and delivery, 315-487-2222. It's 315-487-2222. And you can find out more about the Wildcat by going to WakeUpCallDT.com, clicking on their logo. Mike, as always, I appreciate it. Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com for Mike Sofka, 24/7. WakeUpCallDT.com for me, and the two of us together in Winning Fantasy Football's group on Facebook. Mike, as always, I appreciate it. And thank you today for sharing your Ukrainian background, for helping me to know something and learn something about you I didn't know. Thank you for what you're doing for the Ukrainian people. I'm excited for the stories that you're going to be telling. And more than anything, I'm happy that we spent this Fantasy Football Power Hour talking about the more important things on top of all that we already do. So thank you for being you. Thank you for everything you bring forward. Thank you for your prayers and well wishes. Thank you for believing in God, and thank you for trying to help out people and to feel that a stranger is still important is such a beautiful thing in this world. So more than anything else, thank you for being a bigger person and for caring about people, because that needs to be thanked more than ever right now.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you for the continued support on your behalf. And you're not afraid to take a chance or do something or step out or speak your mind, and that's what I like about you. That's what I love about you. And again, prayers be with the people of the Ukraine.
Yeah, we stand with Ukraine, and we stand with everyone whose freedoms that God gave you are being taken away or tried to be taken away by people or anything else. If it ain't God, I don't care what they have to say. So let's stand together, let's stand tall, and let's pray for each other and do what we can to help each other. Mike, as always, stay safe and stay well, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Sounds good, Dan. Thanks.
Take care, and God bless you all.